Hi everyone and welcome to the Football Analyst. In this video we'll be analysing some of the reasons for Liverpool's recent struggles by focusing particularly on their 3-2 loss against Brentford recently in the Premier League. A few things we'll be focusing on are their trouble defending set pieces and throw-ins, getting hit on the counter a bit and the way teams are doing that, and we'll have a deeper dive into Florian Wirtz and Mohamed Salah's struggles impacting the team and performance. So without further ado, let's get started. So Liverpool, as we've come to know, set up in their favoured 4-2-3-1 in the Arne Slot system. This lends itself to a compact defensive unit, particularly with the two pivots here, the double pivots, helping shield the back line. And they also have a roaming number 10 that's able to receive balls here in between the lines in gaps. He can also come in here and play as a traditional 6. But this is generally where their number 10 picks up the ball. Dominic Szoboszlai played that role really well last season, and they've obviously brought Wirtz in here, and we'll touch a bit more on how he started his Liverpool career and maybe some things that he can do better. However, offensively in the final third, it offers Slot's team 4 genuine threats at goal. So these are the 4. They've got the 2 wingers, so Gakpo will come inside. Mohamed Salah has been hanging out wide, but traditionally he would come inside, and Wirtz would come and almost act as a pseudo-striker. We would also see that because the wingers are inverted, that their fullbacks are able to come up high and almost play as your traditional left and right mids that bomb up and down the pitch. And then Szoboszlai is kind of a pseudo number 10. He'll push forward too. And they're left really with 3 defenders, with Van Dijk, Konate and Gravenberch kind of shielding in front. So that seems to be the way that the top clubs go about things if they're utilising those fullbacks. But we'll move on into the next slide. So we'll take a look at their dead ball liabilities, particularly defensively. So as we can see here, this is the throw-in for Brentford's opening goal against their recent match with Liverpool. As we can see, they have a large grouping of players around the top of the 6-yard box. So obviously Liverpool are in green. We can see that the majority, Van Dijk, Ekitike, Konate, they've got Szoboszlai marking, Bradley here, and I think that's Curtis Jones. So they have a lot. Their main aerial defenders up at the top of the box where Brentford's numbers are, and Brentford have played this really well. However, with this kind of throw-in tactic right now, the main tactic is not necessarily for Brentford to score against these players, but it's really to isolate Milos Kerkez. I'll draw that a bit better at the back here. He's quite vulnerable in the air. He's got a small frame, and we can see that they've got a player here. It's kind of just out the back. Kerkez doesn't have physical contact with him, so he's not quite sure what he's going to do. But we'll talk about that in the next slide. So as we can see, the Brentford targets have completely drawn out Liverpool defenders to the front post as the balls come in. Particularly due to the unpredictability of the long throw. So the anxiety of that has caused them to come forward. So it's quite a clever tactic. It's good that it's coming back in the game. But what it has left is Kerkez on an island with Utara, I think that's how you pronounce it, as he's moved late and unmarked. And a simple flick on is all it takes for Kerkez to feel left overwhelmed, and to not have touch on his opponent. Unfortunately, for Brentford, it was able to fall to Utara, and he was able to knock it in the net. But it just goes to show that Kerkez is unable to... They're targeting him. It's a bit like what they did with Alexander-Arnold. So the result in this slide is pretty clear to see. Kerkez is unable to physically reference where Utara is due to his late and unmarked movement, all while focusing on the flick-on. We can see the amount of Liverpool bodies that have been completely made irrelevant as the ball is headed on. The idea of isolating Kerkez as the weakest link is like that of what Trent Alexander, they used to do to Trent Alexander-Arnold, as I mentioned, just in a different way. So it's from set pieces this time. So for Liverpool to move forward and protect against this, they'll have to find a better way to compensate for his lack of height and arguably strength at set pieces and in aerial battles. Andy Robertson kind of had a few struggles with this, but he was a bit more rock solid and strong. He got that Scottish strength, you know what I mean? But maybe better balance in their structure for these throw-ins and corners will help hide Kirkesh from being isolated like this. Also, maybe some better help from Gakpo and Wirtz. You know, if they're going to have those two back, maybe one of them needs to just protect the back post, because I think teams are going to start targeting Kirkesh, particularly on set pieces. The next thing we're going to quickly look at Liverpool's weakness to counter-attack at the moment. You know, with their fullbacks pushing high, Liverpool are susceptible to this a little bit. And with many teams adopting the 4-4-2 shape, 1v1s have become more common. So we can see, you know, they've got a 1v1 here. Pretty much they can 1v1 the whole back line of Liverpool. And then, you know, in midfield, they have, you know, they can pin the defensive mids back too as well. So, you know, for Brentford, doing this gives them the opportunity to play direct into 1v1s, particularly on the wing. Couple that with Liverpool's traditional high line, and you have an easy opportunity to send the ball over the fullbacks and put them under pressure, particularly if you have quick wingers, because there's a lot of space behind here to just, you know, punch the ball into without much. You know, you don't have to put it on a dime. You pretty much just have to kick at the grass. And if you've got quick wingers, they can really put Kirkesh and Bradley under pressure, particularly if you've got two strikers as well, because it keeps the centre halves occupied. So in this example, we can see that there's some light pressure. Arne Slot's team doesn't press as hard as a Klopp-era Liverpool, but with respect to counter-attacks, Liverpool have always been generally pretty good at being able to deny quick play due to their all-in frontal press. However, in the Arne Slot system, right now they're in a state of not applying enough pressure, as they don't have guys like Diaz that really applied good pressure. You know, they've got Wirtz here and he's putting on light pressure on Kelleher. Salah has never really been a big presser. And Gakpo, I don't think, has got the mobility of a Diaz to really press as well. So they're kind of missing a bit. Obviously, Ekitike is not in this frame. He's caught elsewhere out of the frame. He's not a bad presser, but again, you know, if you get passed around a bit, this can open up this sort of play. We can see Kelleher was pretty much able to launch a long ball straight out to the wing under little pressure. And because of Liverpool's high line, it doesn't really matter if it's inaccurate or not. It still has the potential to be dangerous as teams camp their forwards on the halfway line. We can see as they've turned around, Brentford have pretty much got three forwards ready to go. You can count him there. Someone that Van Dijk's got to take care of. But we can see Konate can't come and assist because he's tied up with their forward here. I forget his name. But this was actually the play that caused Mamardashvili to come out and play it out of bounds. So it does force the keeper to come out and deal with this, which can have issues at times. And the subsequent throw-in from this was actually led to Brentford's opening goal. So it does have that compounding effect of being able to gain territory quickly and force long throws, which I think a lot of teams are going to try and do now. They're going to go direct, and if the ball gets kicked out of play, they'll try a long throw, or potentially it'll go out for a corner. So Liverpool are going to have to find a better way to cover this sort of thing, whether or not Mamardashvili sits up a bit higher and he's able to control the ball a bit more rather than kicking it out. Whether or not they move to a bit of a back five. I know at times when they had Fabinho, he would kind of sit in between the two centre-backs and they were able to cover the full-backs a bit off there. It was kind of to help Alexander-Arnold. You would push Konate wider and have Fabinho come in the slot in between the two, him and Van Dijk. But they're going to have to come up with something to stop this play if it's going to become a regular thing. The next thing we're going to look at, we're going to have a bit of a deeper look at this, is Wirtz and Salah's form issues. So they've both been terribly out of form. We're going to look at some data and some examples. So in this situation, we're going to focus on Wirtz first. So both Wirtz and Salah are having major form issues and particularly finding themselves giving the ball away very cheaply. And it's usually been from a poor and lazy pass or decision. Here the ball is rolled over to Wirtz from Szoboszlai. It's been played out wide for him. And Liverpool are now finally in a position to have a look against a Brentford defence that is a bit exposed. At this point in time, they were really parking the bus and they managed to get a bit of a break. However, instead of Wirtz really assessing the options, he decides to play a lazy first-time ball to neither really Salah or Ekitike, and it's been easily dealt with by the Brentford defence. So he pretty much plays it in the middle here, in the middle of the two of them, and it's behind Salah. He can't stop and come back and retrieve it, and Ekitike gets cut off by the Brentford defence. Had he just had Wirtz just taken a bit longer to assess his options, there's a ball here where Gakpo can potentially run in and score that. So that's kind of the composure or lack of decision making, and you could argue laziness. I've watched a bit of Liverpool this season, and it seems that Wirtz does have a tendency to almost play a bit lackadaisical. He lacks a bit of care on the ball with his passes, and we'll look at more examples of that in the next few slides. So just touching on this one still, the aftermath is a real moment of frustration for Szoboszlai in particular. We can see him here really venting. He's turned his back on the play. He's obviously a bit annoyed by the decision by Wirtz to play a ball like that. They're in such a good position that, Salah's a bit annoyed as well. He's been out of form as well. Salah, he hasn't been in the goals, so he would have loved to have got something there. But these kind of types of passes made with what seems to be little purpose and intent to really hit the target is what's causing Liverpool the most grief at the moment, and allowing teams to hit them on the counter more regularly. In another example with Wirtz, he again has the ball rolled to him from Bradley, so up on the flank here, gets rolled over, and he has space in front of him to really drive. He can really create this a 2v3 with Salah here and Ekitike, with just the two centre halves defending. Instead of really assessing his options, he tries to play a first-time ball again with seemingly little care about really trying to thread the pass. I mean, the pass is on, but he's just tried to hammer it through. Really, he could have applied a bit of swerve on it so Salah could run in and almost thread the ball through there. He could have just played it out wide, I guess. He could have done the same thing for Ekitike. However, instead, he's just slammed a ball first time straight into the Brentford defender, as we can see here. So the Brentford defender can easily cut this off. So this lack of, I don't know if it's a lack of confidence, decision-making, or just a lackadaisical attitude, but Wirtz giving the ball away in an unforced fashion is becoming a regular occurrence, and it's really affecting Liverpool's build-up and threat at goal. Another thing Wirtz is struggling with at the moment is he's trying to pull off risky passes through a defence with good coverage. So he's trying to thread the ball here through to Bradley. However, we can see that Brentford have a defender here, and they also have their other defender kind of covering this off, ready to pounce. So I think Wirtz is in a state at the moment where I don't know if he's really adjusted to Premier League defences. I think in the Bundesliga, maybe things that he's been doing, he's been able to get away with, but in the Premier League, defences are a lot tougher to get through. In this situation, the kind of pass wasn't available. Maybe he could have played it with more care, or played it out wide so that it could be received. But he could have done something else to allow his team to really set up the field in the final third, because Brentford have got good coverage here. Instead, he tries to thread the needle to Bradley, whereas he could have laid it off to Szoboszlai, or he could have, played it wide to ensure they kept the ball, and Bradley could have bombed down to the byline and put something in. So Wirtz has got some work to do. Salah, on the other hand, has always been a driver of the ball, but so far this season he's really refraining from taking space. In this moment, instead of pushing into the space, which he could have driven here and got onto his left, which he's usually done in the past, he tries to play the ball to Ekitike down here, which is too easy for the Brentford defenders to come across and cut off. So we can see, quite easily, the Brentford defence has been able to cut that off. So Salah is as much a culprit as Wirtz currently at giving the ball away cheaply. We can see here that he is getting tackled 20% more than usual. He's getting tackled it's about 24% more than last season with his take on. So that's quite large. He usually has and at the moment he's only getting past 15% of the time, whereas it's been up in the 40s in past seasons. So he's really not being able to get past defenders at all this season. He's also down on his medium and long range pass success or completion rates. We can see his medium passes are down a touch. A small sample size in previous seasons, but just goes to show, particularly with his long passes, they're down a lot. And this includes things such as crosses and longer balls through on goal. So his crosses have been quite poor this season. We can also sort of judge him against players in his position amongst the top 5 leagues and European competitions. So for pass completion, he's in the 17th percentile, so which is really low. So that's a really low rank. We can see, his assists and things. He's up in the 94th percentile. Non-penalty goals, almost half a goal per 90, so he's up in the 93rd percentile. So that's really elite. But, his passing is really poor. His successful take-ons, he's in the 24th percentile, which is really low for Salah. Even his progressive passes and progressive tallies are just really low. Only in the 50 and 60th kind of percentiles there. So that's something he's been very poor with this season. He'll need to boost those numbers if he's going to have a repeat of his output of previous seasons. And while Wirtz is also struggling, as we've mentioned, his general numbers compared to other forwards seem pretty acceptable at the moment for a player in a new league and a tougher league, and maybe a larger team, a bigger team. It's his ability, whilst on the pitch, to create any genuine goal and shot creating opportunities. Some of the reasons why we've previously touched on is what's really hurting him and the team's performance at the moment. So we can see he's in the 36th percentile for goals. Non-penalty goal XG, he's in the 50th percentile. He's not getting a whole heap of shots up. Also, his pass completion is really low, in the 62nd percentile for the Big 5 leagues in European competition. So for a number 10 at a club like Liverpool, they need this to be higher. His progressive carries is really low in the 56th percentile. And he's just not getting touches in the penalty spot either. You'd hope, as a number 10 that's trying to bomb forward and be part of the play, he would get that up a bit higher. We can see in this chart as well that in previous seasons, his shots created and goals created through passes and things like that being part of the play, it's really low for Liverpool this season. Now, he's only really created one. These are all stats from Soccer Ref, I believe, or FootballRef.com. And then just his shots that he's been able to create is quite low as well. So the shots per 90, 4.7 there is a bit lower than what he was doing at Leverkusen. But his goals created per 90 at 0.15 compared to, it's been pretty much 1 per game. In his previous 2 seasons at Leverkusen is really low. That really needs to improve if Liverpool are going to get the most out of what they expect from him. For Liverpool to recover any form, they really need their key players to take better care of the ball, particularly in the final third. Just for a bit of a conclusion, they also need to find a way to protect against the counter-attack and dead ball situations, which is what they did so well under Klopp. They were able to compensate for that. However, I hope you've enjoyed this short analysis on how Liverpool are struggling at the moment and maybe some things that they can do better. Maybe some statistics that players are ranking a bit low in, and if they can get that a bit higher, maybe we can see a bit of a return to form. But I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you for the next one. May your team be forever winning. Cheers.